Margie here. We're getting to the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. And so many of us have some bad habits that we just don't want to bring with us into the new year, as well as add some good ones. Well, how can we do this? Well, today we're going to focus on habits with our special guest, Friis. And Mass is the author of Winning Habits and Routines and the founder of Growth Island, which is a podcast on health, performance, business, and life's bigger mysteries, covering more than 70 episodes with global experts. Playing sports at a high level and discovering many studies on personal growth and performance led Mass into a continuous research journey. He found that many resources focus 80% on the problems and only 20% on the solutions. Now he is on a mission to flip this statistic around to help more people. And in today's talk, he really goes into how you can choose the right habits for you, how to build new habits, even sustain them in stressful situations, and break bad habits, as well as what are the habits of the top performers. So lots of great information. So stay tuned. Welcome, Mass. I'm so excited to have you here. This is a topic that's so near and dear to my heart. And this is the perfect time that this is going to air because right before the new year. So this is really on the top of everyone's mind. So I know you're going to really fill us with some great information that we could all put into our life.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've really been looking forward to it. And I love your show as well and how you also focus on positivity and happiness. And I really believe that habits is such a core thing for living a happy life and also having healthy bones.
So why don't you think I love to hear the backstory? And you wrote this fabulous book on winning habits and routines. But how did you get and you do so much, but how did you get into this field? Like what motivated you to really go along this path and really focus on habits and all this good stuff you do?
So I've always been extremely curious as a kid. So I would drive my parents nuts, and also when I got older, other people with all of my questions about like, how does the world work? Like, why is a cow called a cow? Why is it not called a horse? That's what my dad always used to entertain us with, like the story of driving, and I would be asking these questions. And I was very lucky that my dad entertained a lot of my curiosity and took me to the library. So I've always been extremely curious about like what drives us, like why are we doing as we like, why are we acting the way that we are? What makes a happy life? Why are some people extremely happy and fulfilled despite having nothing, and other people that have everything are not happy? So that's always been like a driving question for me that I've tried to look into, from reading the Dalai Lama to Tony Robbins. That's been a big source of inspiration for me, to then studying a lot more psychology and trying to understand like what is it that drives us. And then I was lucky to get the chance to take a class at Harvard, and I took the class with the longest title. It was the psychology of emotional, behavioral, motivational self-regulation. So very long title, and that was a lot about habits. Basically, like the studies, and we went into the studies arguing for and against different stands, and also from the scientific perspective of saying things that worked and doesn't work. For example, do we have limited willpower? A lot of people talked about that, and Baumeister, a very known scientist, has found that we have limited willpower. But there are also studies showing that we don't have limited willpower. It's just a matter of what we think about it. But that kind of kickstarted me even more on like, okay, habits are so central for the life that we're living. Having like micro good habits is really makes the difference. It's not about making like that one or two big outbursts of energy and doing something. It's really what do we do on a continuous basis that defines how is our life. If you look at all of the people have performed the best or received the best results, it's not about one act. It's about all those small habits that they've done. And that's one of the reasons why I got so curious about habits and wanted to learn how to really master them.
Oh, I love that. In your book, I'm going to read this because this was so interesting to me. You say 1% improvement every day compounds to it's 3,778% improvement in a year. Can you explain that? Because that I agree with you because habits can be overwhelming, and overwhelm is really is really just the opposite of what we're trying to create. And so I'm such a big believer, and that's what I teach as well, that small steps and but that's a very interesting statistic. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a crazy number, right? I sent it around to I think three of my people that are working with finance, just to be sure. Like, did I did the math correct? Is the did I calculate it right? Right? And it's crazy, but it's that compounding effect. We have the same thing if you fold a piece of paper. So like a normal piece of paper, if you fold it once, then you fold it one more time. If you fold it around 40 times, it goes all the way to the moon. It's mind-boggling. So that's basically the power of compounding. So that means that we just like have that improvement on that improvement we had before. Would go into the moon, like that's also doubling, right? Here it's just 1%, but it goes really slow in the start, and that's the same thing with habits. We might go to bed 3 minutes earlier, right? And we don't really feel the difference. But then the day after, we go to bed 3 minutes earlier again. So then it's 6 minutes. The day after, 3 minutes more. We then wake up more rested. Because we wake up more rested, we potentially meditate for 3 minutes. Then that meditation, the day after, we feel a little bit better. That means that discussion with our husband or our wife or the customer or someone else, we might have a little bit more energy when that happens, and we might not go into the discussion. But it's small accumulations that over the long term suddenly give the big impact, right? So like the first week where you go to bed 3 minutes earlier every single day, you don't really feel that big of a difference. But after a week, you went to bed 21 minutes earlier and suddenly you feel a bit more fresh in the day, right? So it compounds these small habits that we actually do. But we often think about that we have to go for the big changes. Like I follow Tony Robbins and he often talks about massive action, and there's so much power in that as well. But I think unless you're in that setting, for example, a seminar and you have a peer group, most of us have just experienced that we wanted to take massive action. We wanted to change 10 habits at the same time. And one day after, we were back at square one, right? So it's those small things that we can actually do, and it's better to do it over the long term, continue to do it, and get that success so that we are fueling more success than constantly trying something, failing, hitting ourselves in the head. I think we've all been there. We wanted to implement too many things and we're kind of blaming ourselves afterwards, like, why haven't I done this? Like, I'm a responsible person. And that's why it's so important that we start with these small steps and we are aware and understand that it accumulates to a big difference, but we need to be patient.
Oh, I love that. And it's sustainable in that way when you do it slowly and just gradually add on, as you said. So everyone's listening and it's about to be the new year. And where do you suggest we start?
That's a really good question. I think it's important to realize that we don't change too much. So as we just discussed about, what is that one habit potentially that will enable you to do more good things? And what is that one habit that gives you joy? So often we design our life, or many people design their life to not be enjoyable. Like there's so many shoulds instead of wants. And we can really find habits that gives us joy. And a good way of looking at it, I got it from Tony Robbins, and James Clear also writes about in Atomic Habits, is really you can either look at outcome change or you can look at identity change. And outcome change might be, I want to lose 10 kilos. It's such a classic over New Year's, right? People want to lose 10 kilos and get in their best shape ever. What often happens, we know, is that the majority of people, they gain that weight on right back after. So it's often not sustainable. We can often get there and we can get started. The other way is focusing on identity change. So identity change is, who do we want to be? So say I want to be a fit mom or fit grandma, someone that can play with my kids. That's the important thing. It's not about losing 10 kilos. And then from that, you decide what are the habits and systems that you need to be able to do that are aligned with your identity. So you can actually find fun stuff. It might be dancing. It might be something completely else, but where you're moving in a joyful way. And then you'll get the outcome that you are a fit grandma or a fit mom that can play with your kids. Instead of saying losing 10 kilos, counting all of your calories, and then eventually it'll change your identity. So really starting with, who do you want to be as a human being? It's a big question, I know, but hopefully you have the time to stop up now, or you have the time over the new year to think about, who do you want to be? What would make you happy? What kind of person would you be where you'd be proud of yourself? When you look at being 90 years old and you look back, like, that's the kind of person I would be proud of being. And then you design your habits and your routines from that.
Oh, that's great. And in your book, which is so wonderful, you have worksheets that people can go through to give them exactly how they, just to help you think and help you focus on what you're trying to achieve, which is so great. And I think it's sort of a step by step, so it makes it easy to do that. So now what happens when it's a stressful time? And sometimes a lot of people are like, oh, it's just too stressful to add a new habit, or how can I, you know, I'm just under too much stress. And I know in the book, you actually have a whole chapter on that. So can you share some tips we can do if we're sort of thinking, oh, things are just too stressful right now to add a new habit?
Sure. And it's a great question because that's often what we run into, right? Or that we get stressed and then we give up on that habit. And I think one of the key things, at least that we found, is that you want to make it as small as possible, basically going back to what we talked about earlier. With many things, is about the fundamentals. And it's kind of boring to hear the fundamentals again and again, but there's a reason why the best coaches in the world, when they teach fundamentals. Like when it's the football stars, the basketball players, and so on, it's the fundamentals they're practicing again and again and again. And it's kind of annoying because we want to hear that magical trick or this like advanced hack, but really it's what I write in my book is the smallest winning step. So the smallest winning step is the smallest amount of the habit that you can do. So let's say that the habit that you want to do is meditating. Okay, so what's the smallest amount, the smallest winning step that gets you started on meditation? Well, for me, that's 3 minutes of meditation. And you might be thinking, then you're not meditating. It's like, that doesn't matter. It's about getting started. And anyone can do 3 minutes of meditation on a daily basis. If you cannot do 3 minutes of meditation, you don't have the time for that. You don't have a life.
No, I couldn't agree more because, well, I actually put myself in a course with meditation, but in general, what I found working with people is you're right, even 1 minute and then 2 minutes, but 3 minutes is a great start, and then increase from there. I think that's such a good thing because people, just the word meditation to so many people is overwhelming. But right, 3 minutes, everybody has that.
Everyone has that. And if you can't find 3 minutes in your day, you have bigger problems. Like, it's that simple. If you can't find 3 minutes in your day to take care of yourself, there's some serious problems. And I'm pretty sure if we took out your phone, we could find those 3 minutes that you spent on some different apps. Yeah. So most people are like, I don't have any time. We can find 3 minutes. But the important thing is really finding that smallest step, and then identifying it, writing it down. I have in my book, as you said, it's very worksheet oriented. So I kind of wrote the book like a workshop that you go through exercises. And one of them is just writing down what's the smallest winning step. So it might be 3 minutes of meditation, and you ideally want to do 15 minutes. But as long as you have that written down, like it's 3 minutes, it's easier for you when you get really stressed and you don't have that much time to stick with the habit and stick with doing it. And then it's easier to turn it up again, because so many of us tried. Like you've been doing well for like 3 weeks, and then you fall off on one day. And then suddenly you're off that habit, you don't get back on it. That's where the smallest winning steps help us so much. And then remembering, don't miss twice. So it's okay to miss once in a while. Most of us do that. Nothing wrong with that. There's even studies showing that it doesn't make a difference if you miss it once in a while. The important thing is just to get back at it. So I would really focus on that. And then there's this exercise which it's called mental contrasting and implementation intentions. But mental contrasting is basically that you imagine what do you want. So that goal and that habit that you want to implement. You imagine what do you really want. What will this habit and this goal give you? Ideally, you close your eyes so you get an emotional attachment to it. You really imagine that you accomplish this goal and what it's going to give you. That means your motivation is going to increase. And the researchers hypothesize that's one of the reasons that it works. The second thing, you imagine what are the most likely challenges that you're going to meet. So what are the most likely challenges that will mean that you're not going to succeed? So once you know that, that's the mental contrasting. Then you do implementation intentions, saying like, okay, when, where, and how will I make this habit? How will I succeed with this? What do I have to do to succeed? For example, I'll meditate every morning once I get up. I'll sit this specific place in my living room, and I will open Insight Timer and I'll listen to this meditation track. And then you write down the most likely challenges that you thought about in mental contrasting. How will you overcome them? Writing that down, how will you overcome it? So that you know, for example, it could be, I used to go to Thai boxing, and I would come home, and it would be 500 meters from where I live. So I would come home and I would have this magical couch. It's a mysterious couch. I heard about that. I'm not the only one that had one of these couches. But what would happen would I would just sit down in it, and I would get sucked into the couch, and I wouldn't be able to get my ass up again before like 3 minutes too late to go to that class, right? I'm not sure if any one of the listeners have had any of those couches, or have you ever been in one of those couches?
No, this I've never heard of.
No, it's a mysterious couch, but I had one of those. I've heard other people with a similar experience. But what I found was that if I got home, put my back down to change, I wouldn't get going. So that was one of the most likely challenges. Instead, if I took my gym clothes with me to work, I could go directly to the gym. It would be annoying that I have my computer and so on, but I would go there almost every time. So thinking through some of the things that you can eliminate, or already make the decision that I will do X when this happens, that's quite impactful. So
Yeah, I love that.
Basically just doing those exercises. And one of the studies, they looked at women and how could you get women to eat more healthy? So how could you get women to eat more vegetables and fruit? And anyone that looked at studies know that that's really hard to do. One group only got information about why it was important to eat healthier, and the other group got information about why it was important to eat healthier, and then they did these exercises. They followed up 2 years after, which is quite a long time after. The group that got information only, but that learned about why this was important, they ate 8% more, which is also good. So you actually get something just about learning about it. So when we're speaking on this podcast about some things that are important, it might change some behavior even in 2 years' time. But the people that did the exercises, they ate 28% more.
Wow.
Fruit and vegetables. So that's just food. There's been studies done as well with exercise, where people are exercising twice as much, and many other things. So something as simple as that, sitting down, writing it, actually makes a difference.
Oh, that's great. All right. So we're implementing these good habits, and we know what to do in stressful situations, but so many people have, quote, bad habits or things that they say, okay, starting in 2022, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to, whatever it is, I sit and drink a whole bottle of soda, whatever their habit is. What's your recommendation? Where do we start on breaking the what we can call bad habits, or things that we just don't really want to carry with us into the next year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think more people probably benefit more from getting rid of bad habits than having to add new things. So it's a very common thing. So first figuring out, why do you have this habit? Do you actually want to get rid of it? Because many people say they want to get rid of a habit or change, but they don't really want to change. They know they should, but they don't really want to change, right? So it's extremely important actually to get clear on, do you actually want to change? Is this something you actually want to change, and why do you want to change it? So there's actually been studies as well on mental contrasting and implementation intentions for getting rid of bad habits. So the same thing, you imagine what will you get out of getting rid of this habit? And what are the steps that are going to make it difficult for you to actually get rid of it? So for example, eating the soda, right? Well, you probably shouldn't buy the soda. That's the first step. You don't want to have it in your home. And it really helps to understand the TAR model. The TAR model is how you build a habit. So the T stands for trigger, the A stands for action, and the R stands for reward. Researchers call it different things. I coined it the TAR model. Some people call the trigger the cue. But basically, when you look up studies, it's the same words that they're using. So the trigger is basically a trigger or cue, something that gets us to do something. And let's say the habit is eating chocolate, or let's say candy instead, right? So you often see the candy. That's the trigger. If you have it in your home, the easy thing is to remove it from your home. Actually chuck it out. If it's in your home, it's very hard to just have it only for Friday candy. In Denmark, we have something called Friday candy. So you only eat it on Fridays. Very few people can actually keep it to only on Fridays because They walk past the kitchen, they see it, there's that cue for it, that trigger, and then the action is, oh, they eat it and they get a reward. So we want to design that the trigger, we want to make it as invisible or remove it. If we can remove it, much better than make it invisible. If we make it invisible, we need to use willpower. If we totally remove it, we don't need to use any willpower. When it comes to something like eating snacks, it's important to understand there's both the visual trigger and there's the emotional and the biological trigger. So it might be an emotional trigger. If it's something that you're dealing with and it's a way for you to feel comfort, you need to figure out what can you actually replace it with. Can you replace it with meditation, breathing exercise, calling someone you love, something called a pulse snack, so like 10 squats or doing some kind of movement, that can help. If it's because you're still really hungry, you need to eat. Like, it's that simple. You might not be getting the nutrition, or you might not be getting enough fats and proteins or other stuff. That means that you want a snack, then you can replace it with carrots and cucumbers and so on. But you need to figure out, like, is there a root cause that you're snacking because you're actually hungry? Because then you need to eat something else.
Can I just say something about that? It's so sad in our society where food is used as a reward. You got that goal in soccer. Oh, wow, great. Or you got a good grade. You get a major big dessert with all sorts of, it's been a reward for people, unhealthy food. And it's sort of something that I think is ingrained in a lot of ways. So it's thinking, I love what you're saying about thinking of another reward that's not food, or that's not that it's, if you're having good food, that's one thing, but it's not like you're getting candy because as a reward. So I think I really like what you said.
And I think we have so much responsibility, parents and people in management and so on, because what you're saying is so spot on. Like, we use it as a reward, like, oh, something good happened. We're celebrating with something that's poisoning our body. We're just like, what? Why? Like, we could have amazing melon, we could have amazing fruit, like berries or other things. Like, there's so many other choices you can make that are actually good for you. But we often have this association, like, oh, this is so cozy. This is the good life. We have to celebrate, or like, it's not living life, where what you associate also is extremely important. Do you have the association that you can't have like a cozy good time celebration without champagne or candy? Or can you actually start associating, celebrating with like smoothies, amazing juices, stuff that actually empowers your body? And that's a mental thing as well, to think about a mindset. So I actually spend time as well on associating like things that are good for me, thinking about in the brain, teaching my brain to associate it with something positive. So instead of being like, oh, I'm punishing myself, I can't get candy, I'm like, candy is poison. I'm lucky that I want to treat my body with something good. I want to treat it with a fresh juice or something else. But it's an exercise, and it's also depends on where you are with your mental health, because some people that are having challenges with mental health, you want to be very careful that you're not punishing yourself more. Or if you have eating disorders as well, you want to be very careful as well that you don't associate like, oh, now I'm a bad person again. But if you don't have an eating disorder and you don't have mental challenges, you can use that exercise as well of starting to associate it with something being bad. But you want to be careful, because if you already have challenges with food, this advice can actually be more damaging. But for people that don't, it can actually help.
Mass, you have a podcast and you've done a lot of work with top performers and really figuring out what are their habits. So I'd love you to share that with all of us.
Yeah, so it's something that I often ask in the end of the episode is like, what are your top habits, or what advice would you give? And I often hope that I'll get some kind of magical answer, something new, fancy. But again, it's actually often fundamentals. It's simple things as like, plan your day, like take time for breaks. Often people are so focused on like hustling and so on, but it's like taking time for break. Make sure you meditate. Make sure that you actually spend social time. Something like breath work, meditation. Like, we heard meditation so many times, and I think people are almost getting tired of hearing it, but there's a reason why so many people are mentioning it. Tim Ferriss wrote the Tools of Titans and Tribe of Mentors or something like that, and I think it was like 80% of those top performers have some kind of mindfulness practice. It's like crazy. So you don't have to meditate. And someone that have a hard time being still, I found that body scan meditation is much easier for me, because then I can feel my body. So simple things like that makes a huge difference. Like planning your day, setting intentions, meditating, making sure to take breaks, not work all the time, be around people. A small fun habit is also the one of actually social eating. So I once heard like never eat alone, but make that you meet up with people and eat. That's also an easier way to be social, especially if you have a busy work schedule. But taking that time to be around other people and actually be mindful and enjoying the time.
Great. How fun. Those all sound so wonderful. I think just prioritizing enjoyment is what I'm hearing from you, and things that you like and things that give you pleasure, which is so often we don't. We just live our lives. And I think with the new year coming up, it's something that I'm such a big everything you're saying, because I know I was one of those people who not that I've always been happy, but I was a bit stressed. And I realized I got a speeding ticket. I've told this story before, a speeding ticket on the way to this meditation 8-week class I was doing. It was the second class. We hadn't even done anything. And I got a speeding ticket. And that knocked me in the head that I was absolutely not practicing what I preached. And so I took this class so seriously. And once I started the habits and made them a priority, my life is completely different. Not that there's not stress, but you can ride the waves. And it's just
Mm.
everything you're saying. I couldn't agree more. Do you want to just tell people, just very briefly, because not everyone knows what the body scan meditation is, because it is something everybody can do. And I think you're right. It's a very good place to start. That's what they started in. I did the John Kabat-Zinn program, and that's where they start, because it just focuses you in, because your mind can be a million other places. So you want to just very briefly just say what that is?
Sure. So body scan meditation is easy because it often starts someone is a guided meditation, so someone is speaking. So it might be like feel down into your right toes and you're feeling your right toes. Then it moves on to feel your entire foot or feel your heel, and then it moves up and one part of the body, and you put your focus on that, and it's transforming. It's absolutely fantastic. And for someone that likes to move, and especially the people that have a hard time being still, it's much easier because you have focus on something. And you also get better at feeling your body. I think so many of us have lost the ability to feel ourselves. We're all in our head. So it gets the chance to go back into the body and feel the different parts of the body. So basically, body scan meditation, it's guided meditation. Someone is speaking, there's often some sound as well, and you focus on one body part at the time. And it feels fantastic.
It really does. And it's such a great way to start, because, as I said, we have so many distractions, and so many people are just, I can't calm my mind. You don't have to worry about it. You just start thinking about your toe and thinking, as you said. Wow, we could go on and on. So what would you say to everybody listening? So it's the new year, and people are going to write their intentions, and what would you say was one of the best things, or what advice would you give people that can really make a difference in this upcoming? I mean, you've given us so many tips, but if there's one thing that you really want to leave everybody with, what would that be?
I really think is don't be too hard on yourself. And this sounds, well, you just talked about these habits and all of the things you can introduce. Don't be too hard on yourself. This is a new year. You have a chance to change your life, but don't be too hard on yourself. Start small and know that it's not about changing January. It's about making the small changes so when you look in a year's time that you have a practice of something new. So when you get into this new year, if you miss it once, the new habit that you decided to implement, don't worry, get back on it again. You're a human being. We're all full of mistakes. We're all imperfect. Try and find those tools that are actually working. Like I'm very imperfect. I'm really good at finding the tools to help my imperfectness and control like being human and making sure that my behavior is more aligned. So don't be too hard on yourself and take it easy.
One more thing I didn't ask you in terms of celebrating. So when you do achieve that win, that small win, do you recommend any type of celebration?
Yes, so there are different things. BJ Fogg, Stanford professor, he found out that if you want to build a habit, you ideally want to tie the celebration, the reward, as close to the action. If you say like, okay, I'll do this 10 times, then I will go out have a dinner, that keeps the motivation high, but it doesn't connect it up in the brain. So you want to do something straight away. And this is super simple and super silly, but if you're listening and you're not driving your car, I hope you'll do it with me. We can do it
Yeah.
together. So
Yes.
something as simple as a celebration where you can take your arms all the way up in the air and say like yes, or you
Yes.
do the out like yes, or whatever form, or you give yourself a big hug. um, those three releases something in the brain. So I think on the count down to one, the listeners as well, now you know what's going to go on, then we're going to do that practice. So 3, 2, 1, yes.
Yes.
It feels so silly, but you feel better in your body. I've never had anyone not feel better. People are often laughing if there's other people, but it feels good.
I love this. And I'm big into teaching expansion. We want to do things in our life that cause expansion. And it's a release, it's an expansion. You can't say it's great. I love that. And how easy, how easy. Yes.
It is so. Same with jumping. Like try and stand and jump and look sad. You can't do it.
And you know what else? That's really good for your bones too.
Yes.
Oh, this is wonderful. So how can people get in touch with you? The book's sold everywhere. So tell people the best way to get in touch with you, to listen to your podcast. What?
Yeah. So the easiest way is go to my website, growthisland.com. So growthisland.com. There you can find the link to my Instagram where I'm quite active. I'm sharing stories and posts where I try to have the empowering, happy message of helping people with like small daily tips and so on. So that's basically the best place. And then Growth Island is also the podcast where I interview experts as well, where people can hear more about this stuff.
Oh, this is great. Well, I can't thank you enough. It's been such a pleasure. I'm a big energy person. So you're truly a person who's radiating positive energy, even when you live in different countries. But I feel it I feel it just from your presence. So thank you so much for brightening my day as well. And thank you for being here and sharing all this great wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it. And I feel the energy as well. It's amazing how you can feel it even through a screen, right? When you talk to some people, and I've had the same when I interview people, and I feel it from you as well. Some people have that energy where you're like, your nervous system relaxes a bit more, and it's just easier to be in a joyful mood, right?
It's
So I
really true.
really, really appreciate
It's
that.
contagious. So thank you for sharing your positive vibes with me today and everybody else. So thanks so much. It's really been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Mass and now a better understanding of habits, how you can add new habits into your life, as well as get rid of the ones that are not serving you. All the links Mass talked about will be in the show notes. So this will be the last episode in 2021. So I'm wishing everyone a very happy new year, and let's let 2022 be our best year yet. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next year.